This is a picture of my grandmother who left Bratislava in 1933 to come to what was then called Palestine, the land of Israel. And I'm reading from what I teach about the Holocaust, since my grandmother, my grandfather's wife's family was all murdered in concentration camps on Polish soil. So this is Václav Hondo. I'm reading from what I teach about the Holocaust, since an International Holocaust Day. And the sun shone, and it was not ashamed. This is what the man says. I lived in Tranau, where before the Second World War, more than 45% of the residents were Jews. Today, little evidence reminds us to tell us that the Jews helped to build and shape the city and left a mark on its character. A magnificent Jewish cemetery is preserved. After the war, a monument was erected at the site where mass executions were carried out. Its main element is a broken column from the new synagogue, which the Nazis destroyed. On it is a Hebrew inscription, "The sun shone and was not ashamed." It is a cry of despair and the faces of the tragic events of the Holocaust of the Jews. Decades have passed since the Second World War. Today, for children and youth, the atrocities of those years, including the Holocaust, are not so horrifying, neither in the scale of the crime nor in the way it was carried out. The Holocaust is an extreme example of what racism can lead to, with its ideology of the superiority of some races, its intolerance of different groups of people within a single society who differ in their worldviews or fundamental political ideas, or its xenophobia, that is, aversion to or hatred of foreigners. One consequence of World War II was that the generations growing up after the war had virtually no contact with the problems of ethnic minorities, but it's still important to make them realize the consequences of racism and to place them in the broad context of other ethnic conflicts and the moral norms that apply to the relations and actions of individuals. As we can read in the Universal Declarations of Human Rights, these individuals differ by race, skin color, sex, language, faith, political and other views, nationality, social origin, wealth, birth, or other status. These individuals have many different needs, which they cannot meet by themselves. They cannot live by themselves in isolation from other people. Contact between them takes two forms, communication and cooperation. In the context of unifying Europe, these forms take on a new dimension. Every person belongs not only to his family, region, or class. His bonds of affiliation to cultural and religious communities extend beyond the boundaries of his country of origin. It is the perspectives of the Holocaust that we see that hatred and hostility towards those who are different or who, on the basis of irrational premises, are outside one's own group, can lead to collective violence and crimes. Experiences of the Holocaust that relate to the attitudes and behavior of individuals and social groups towards loathsome acts of violence or coldly performed mass executions are important in the moral dimensions for the present and future. The tragic fate of Jewish people points to the need to seek a new sense of coexistence which overcomes divisions and seeks alternatives to nationalism, racism, extremism, and hegemony. Evil springs from ignorance. In the course of school education, it is important for a young person to learn not only what differentiates and divides nations, societies, and cultures, but what joins them. Showing the richness and values of a multicultural society is one way to inoculate an attitude of respect and tolerance. The tragic fate of the Jews alludes to the present. Terrible atrocities do not take place in a single moment. They are introduced gradually with the more or less active or less passive support of the society in which they occur. It begins with a failure to react to derision, and humiliation. Later comes denials of rights and segregation. At the end, the belief emerges that those others not only are dispensable, but are simply an obstacle to normal life. Thus, teaching about the Holocaust is a reminder that a criminal ideology can arise in any place and any time. The Holocaust contains the message that it's necessary to react at the beginning, not when it is too late, as it is the common practice in the modern world. The example of the Holocaust can be used to show students universal experiences manifested in the attitudes of both individuals and societies, moral choices about good and evil, and about the criteria of responsibility for one's actions in the extreme circumstances of war. These decisions were expressed in the different stances taken towards Jews, from self-sacrificing aid, often beyond the rational limits of assistance, providing hideaways, food, money, and false documents, to vile denunciations and blackmailing of Jews. Perhaps this kind of sensitizing will put an end to attempts to calculate who owns the world's largest cemetery. To explain the genocide, it's not easy. Knowledge is needed when bizarre statements are made in Poland as well. This is very timely now, and hopefully the teachings will continue.